Good afternoon, Space Cadets. Welcome back to Moon Farm. My name's Alex, and welcome to another episode of the Farm Chores podcast, the podcast where you get to come along with me while I do my farm chores. Today it's a little bit windy, and I'm hoping that it's not going to be too bad. I've got a pretty ginormous little puffball on my microphone, so hopefully the wind won't be too bad. If it is, I may just not put this episode out anyway. So, anyway, things are going pretty well around the farmstead. I just put up a new YouTube video the other day, and it is just kind of an update, some things that are going on. The biggest one is that I actually did get COVID. So I was down for 2 days. I had a fever, and it got up to about 103. So a pretty good fever, but that was about it. I had a couple body aches towards the end, but generally it barely got me. I mean, legitimately, I don't feel like the hype is really it's a little bit overhyped, at least for my age group. You know, I'm 26 years old. It's not really a threat to me. Never has been. So, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. And as I mentioned in that YouTube video, the one thing that I really hate about having livestock is that even when you have a 103-degree fever and you feel like crap, you still got to get out here. The animals don't give a crap. They're sitting there going, oh, you've got a fever. Well, I'm an animal. I don't understand. Get the heck out here and feed me. And they just don't care. So that's probably the worst part. You might notice that I still get a little bit out of breath. That seems to be, I don't know, that was like not a big symptom I had when I was really sick. It wasn't until a couple days later. So, I don't know. That could just be me being out of shape and trying to talk. You tell me. You listened to episode 1. Am I worse this week? Did the COVID get me? Oh. Other than that, not a whole lot is going on at the farm. Packing up for our online market this week. Had a pretty good week. Sold 17 dozen chicken eggs. 17 dozen. That's a really good number. That's more than I can produce. So we are moving every egg that these chickens lay. Don't let anyone tell you that small-scale egg production isn't profitable. The people who are telling you that, they're either undervaluing their eggs or they're in the wrong market. That's honestly the case. So that's about it with the farm weather today. We're at like 40 degrees. No snow, though I think we're supposed to get some here in the next couple days. If not snow, we're getting rain. That's been kind of the pattern here. I did have someone help me out yesterday and finish digging the drainage ditch next to the greenhouse. And that, disappointingly, I don't have enough elevation drop for the ditch to actually function right and, you know, be dry. But if it rains any, it'll overflow that ditch and we'll be okay. If you want to see what that looks like, go over to our YouTube channel. You can find that link on my website, and that's where you're going to be able to find video update of some of the things that I'm talking about here. Other farm update, something seems to be injuring a couple of my ducks, and I don't know what it is. Over the last week or so, I've had a couple injure their feet specifically. I think I have 3 ducks that have injured feet. And then I had one duck that injured its wing, and I'm looking around and I don't see that duck that had an injured wing, and that's a bit concerning. Let me check in the hen house. Okay, there it is. She must be laying an egg. Okay, we'll leave her to go. I still gotta collect eggs, but we'll give her a few minutes. Other than that, I think everybody's doing okay. The weird thing is, I don't think it's a predator because I haven't had any chickens get injured. And that's weird to me. Maybe duck is just more delicious? I'm watching the ducks run around and I'm having a hard time seeing which ones had the injured legs, so they must be healing up pretty well. I have a live trap set outside the fence, and the live trap has had a nice chicken or a duck wing that came off a carcass of a bird that got eaten. It's been out there for like a week and nothing's even touched it. So I don't know. Hi, Murphy. Hello. How are you today, Mr. Mans? You would like some food, wouldn't you? Yeah. I've got some food for you. Here you go. Enjoy. Oh, thank you. Oh, stay down. He's a good boy. This week I had someone stop by and basically tell me, hey, you know, I'm not going to tell you it's the neighbor across the street or the woman 3 doors down. I won't tell you that, but they're a little concerned that your guardian dog is not going to be warm enough. And I can assure you, he definitely is. He's an Anatolian Shepherd dog. He was bred for this. You know, when they were bred in Turkey, which has harsher weather than we do, they didn't give him shelters. They just lived out with the sheep. So he is more than comfortable. I'm not concerned about him at all. But they basically asked me, like, hey, would you take his doghouse and turn it around so that it faces the road? That way it faces away from the wind. And then if you would just stuff that thing full of straw, basically just make it look good, right? Make it look like it's warm from the outside. If I do that, then that'll help. I already put up signs that say, you know, notice livestock guardian dog in use, don't enter the property without escort. And hi, Ducky. Hello. I need to get eggs. What are you doing? Oh, thank you. I already put up a sign letting people know this is a livestock guardian dog, thinking that would at least, you know, answer the question of why is there a dog just out there every day, all day. I was talking with the breeder that I got Murphy from. She suggested that I actually print up like an information sheet. You know, here's what they were bred to do. Here's why he's nice and warm. Here's some information about the type of fur that they have and why it's able to keep them warm. And she suggested just type that up and drive down the road and stick it in people's mailbox flags so that they, you know, try to head off the complaint before they make the complaint, because that'll just save you time in the end. I think she's right. I might do that. It really depends on just when I find time. But in case anyone's wondering, Murphy is a happy boy. He's got plenty of nice warm bedding. He stays out of the weather. Oh boy, it's windy. Ooh boy. I'm gonna duck into the quail cage to get out of this wind for a second. Wowza. Excuse me. Excuse me. Can I come in? Oh, thank you. I've got like 4 quail that are all nestled together into a little quail pile. That's cute. That's cute. Anyways, the show topic for today, I wanted to talk to you about marketing gimmicks. Specifically, when you go to the grocery store and you see things that have certain marketing phrases on them. First of all, what does that mean from a legal standpoint? You know, who can put that on their products? And second, why that might be a little misleading. So let me give you an example, and I'll just start going down the list of different marketing phrases. First one I want to start with is in meat, when it says it is antibiotic free. Our animals are not given, antibiotics. The reason that I take issue with this is because by law in the United States, you may not sell meat that has antibiotics in it. Any animal that gets treated with antibiotics is required to go through what's called a withdrawal period, which is the amount of time it takes for that antibiotic to get out of the system of this animal. And usually it's plus a few days, a little bit extra just to make sure. The same actually can be said with milk. If a cow's being treated with antibiotics, their milk is by law not allowed to enter the milk supply in the United States. And they test for it. So if a farmer accidentally milks a cow that is on antibiotics and it gets into their milk tank, the entire milk tank gets thrown out. There are no exceptions to that, and they can get huge fines if they sell milk that has antibiotics in it. So then the question becomes, I understand why someone would want to avoid eating antibiotics because that could have potential health effects. However, because it's become kind of a buzzword, a lot of people think we shouldn't be treating our meat with antibiotics. And that's just cruel. Think about it. You've got, let's just say, one of my ducks, and my duck injures itself and has an infection. That infection is very painful. That infection is hurting this duck. If you're part of the no antibiotics crowd, then you would have to say that we either cull that duck and just kill it immediately, or we let it suffer its way back to health, which that seems kind of cruel. Now, I'm not necessarily opposed to culling, but I feel like people who are generally against antibiotic meats or meats with antibiotics don't understand that and don't understand that culling is the other option. Just like you might get antibiotics if you're sick, antibiotics present a really important part of animal welfare, and they can really help animals avoid suffering. It's the ethical treatment of animals. But you know who probably wouldn't support it? People for the ethical treatment of animals. It doesn't make any sense. Another marketing term that you might hear, well, actually, this is a group of marketing term, and we're going to talk specifically about egg production. So when you go to the store and you see eggs on the shelf, they've got all kinds of phrases written on them, including antibiotic free, but also including things like free range, cage free, pastured. What exactly do those phrases mean? And let's kind of go through that list and talk about what those phrases mean. So let's talk about your traditional eggs. How is your standard white, cheap egg that you get at the supermarket? How is that produced? Typically, it's going to be chickens, usually white leghorns because they're small and efficient, in cages, stacked on top of each other with a conveyor belt on the bottom that catches the manure and moves it out of the building. Maybe they have a feed trough on the outside of the cage that is kind of like a little mini conveyor belt, and they stick their head through the cage to eat. Whenever they lay an egg, it rolls down the cage into an egg catchment, and then it goes off to be washed and sold. It's a really sad life for these chickens, frankly. They spend their entire lives from the minute they start laying eggs in a cage, and whenever they hit a certain age or whenever their egg production slows down, that chicken's done and it's out of there. From a business standpoint, it sort of makes sense. It allows you to sell eggs for 75 cents a dozen and still make a profit. But frankly, the eggs taste like crap. They're not as healthy because the diet they eat is really the only inputs. And the diet is obviously, in this situation, designed to be cheap and effective. So frankly, your standard white egg with no kind of promoting or marketing, that's the worst possible egg. So a step up from that is probably cage-free. So what does cage-free actually mean? Well, a cage-free chicken, if you imagine that same barn, just a big building with no windows, that same barn that used to have all the cages for the chickens, take all the cages out, release the chickens and allow them to walk around on usually like a sand floor or some kind of bedding. That's cage-free. They still go in a nest box to lay their eggs, which then go out onto a conveyor of some kind. It's the same building other than the cages that separate them. In some ways, this can be worse because it allows chickens to pick on each other, and it makes it harder to track individual chickens that, you know, might get injured or whatnot. Cage-free does not mean free range. Cage-free does not mean that they will ever see the light of day. There's a pretty good chance that these chickens will never go outside and will never see the light of day. Cage-free literally means what it says. There is no cage. Other than that, you can't assume anything else about the condition the chickens are kept in. So a step above that, I would say, is probably pastured. In the minimal sense of the term, pastured really just means that the chickens are kept outside. So I like to imagine chicken tractors, and that's the way I keep my quail. A lot of people keep quail in cages. I have pastured quail. So they live in a tractor, which moves and allows them access to eating bugs and stuff, and a lot of their natural behaviors that they would otherwise be able to exemplify. Pasture does allow for some scratching, some foraging, but it is still limited. I suppose it's possible that generally pastured is kind of like cage-free, but with more access to daylight. That's sort of how it is. The final one I want to talk about, and this one could go either way in terms of whether it's a good thing, bad thing, or whatnot, is free range. There's so much confusion surrounding what free range actually means. So, free range, by legal definition, means that the chicken is not kept in a cage, so it is cage-free, and it is allowed access to an outside area. That sounds great, right? However, there's no stipulations on how big that outside area needs to be. There is no rules over what needs to be in that outside area. So, at a minimal level, to call something free range, you could have it in a barn with no windows. You have a tiny door that leads to a concrete pad that is, let's say, 3 feet by 3 feet, and you got 1,000 chickens in there. That is free range. They have access to outside, no cages. However, I think you can imagine with me that that's not a very good living situation at all. Like, that's no different than really cage-free, other than maybe at some point in their lives, though probably not, they'll never decide or go outside. It's kind of sad. And when most people think about free range, what they imagine are farms like mine, where the chickens can go anywhere. They're outside all day, digging in the dirt, scratching the grass, eating bugs, eating weeds, you know, happy chicken behavior. That's what people imagine when they think of free range. it's just really sad that that is not what free range means. So here's what I'm saying. I think it's probably legitimate to raise eggs in a variety of ways, and I can understand the arguments for pretty much all of them. I obviously prefer to keep my animals in a certain way to certain standards because I think that having free range birds that live happy, healthy lives produce happy, healthy eggs, and people can taste that difference. So obviously that's what I like. Here's what I think you should do. If you're not sure about how eggs are raised, you know, if they just have some buzzwords, then you should ask. And if you are not able to ask the farmer who raises the birds, well, then you probably shouldn't buy from them. That's my policy when it comes to meat and when it comes to eggs, when it comes to dairy. If this is a farm that I can't reach the farmer or I can't go see it myself, then I won't buy from them. Not to say that someone else is doing things wrong. Hi, Muscovies. But I want to ensure that the farms that I'm supporting are farms that have values similar to mine, farms that keep animal welfare in high esteem, and farms that do this on a daily basis. You know, they don't just let their chickens out on Saturday when they're given tours. They are exemplifying this good behavior on a daily basis. So there's your education on what different marketing terms, especially as it pertains to meat and eggs, mean. I hope that was informative to you. And if you want to learn more about how I raise my birds and how I do things, you can certainly find out more on my YouTube channel. Or head over to my TikTok. That's where I post all my silly little videos. A lot of behind the scenes kind of things. You could also head over to my Instagram. That's where I put all of my polished and perfect content. You know, only the best from a marketing perspective. That's over on my Instagram. And all of these links are available at moonfarm.us. Oh, I have one farm update that I forgot to tell you about that I'm very excited about. This weekend, on Saturday morning, I've got a couple new guests who are coming to join me on the farm. These guests are of the feline variety. Their names are Lexi and Lemmy, and they are my two new barn cats. Lately, I've been noticing that the rodent population, especially mice specifically, has really been getting out of control, like really bad. They are in my shed, they're in my cooler, they're in my greenhouse, they're in my camper, they're in the chicken shed, they're in the feed shed, they are in my generator, they're everywhere. And it's really starting to become an issue. Because, I don't know if you know this, but mice are the primary vectors for Lyme disease and for ticks. Ticks, when they are little baby ticks and they're too small to bite a human or a deer, their primary food is mice. And mice are the things that carry Lyme disease. So the tick actually gets the Lyme disease from the mice. And that's where it then becomes a problem for the humans that they might bite. So if you can control the mice population and keep it low, then there's less food for the ticks. So there is less ticks. Less ticks means less Lyme disease. Less Lyme disease is good for everybody. So the mice problem needed to be solved, and frankly, it could be a health hazard at some point if I didn't take care of it, because they're mice. They poop everywhere, and mouse droppings carry all kinds of diseases that nobody wants. So what I did, I linked up with a group called Ohio Barn Cat Rescue. And there might be something similar in other states. I would assume there is. But basically the way this group works is I contact them and I say, hey, I have room for 2 barn cats. What do you have? And so they will then put up a request saying, hey, I've got a barn owner with this situation. He's looking for 2 barn cats. Who has barn cats? and people will respond to them and say, I've got 2, or I have 1, I've got these 2 that are semi-friendly, I've got these 2 that are somewhat feral, all the information you would expect. And then the administrator of this group goes to this list of people and basically vets them. Hey, can you prove that these cats have been spayed and neutered? They had a vet checkup. Have they been tested for feline leukemia or any of those other diseases that cats can spread that could be pretty detrimental to local cat populations? And once they verify that all of this vetting has been done and that those cats are good to go, that's when they put that person in contact with me. And in this case, they gave me a call and said, hey, I've got 2 cats. Their names are Lexi and Lemmy. They're young, 2 girls. They're bonded. They are super energetic. And we basically arranged for Saturday morning. They're going to come to the farm. And the process for new barn cats is basically they need to stay contained within an area for at least 4 weeks, but probably closer to 6. That way they start to associate this area where they are now as their home. And if you don't do that, what can happen is they will immediately just take off and just become roaming ferals. You'll never see them again because they don't associate that as their home base that they need to come back to. It also helps them get used to me feeding them, used to me being around. And so that way, should anything happen and I need to take these cats to the vet or something like that, they will be at least somewhat used to me, if not friendlier to me. Now, I'm not a huge cat person. I would be okay without having cats, but they do serve a very specific and important purpose on the farm. And so I decided to get over myself and just go ahead and get a couple. So I told the people, I want cats that are friendly enough that they're going to come around every once in a while so that I can look at them and make sure they're not injured, make sure they're not sick. But other than that, if they are as independent as possible and, don't need my love, they're okay if I don't pet them and cuddle them and name them and, all the fun little belly rubs that cats expect, I am totally okay with not having to do any of that. And ideally, with them being barn cats, they'll also go find their own bathroom, and I won't have to deal with that aspect of my cats. So, yeah, Lexi and Lemmy are coming to join the farm this weekend. I'm pretty excited about them. After the 4 to 6 weeks in a large kind of like dog carrier crate kind of thing, their own like little zoo enclosure. After that, they will have access to my greenhouse, the whole thing, and they'll be able to walk and move around there and get used to it for probably another 2 weeks or so. And then depending on how the weather looks, they'll get their freedom shortly after that. And from there, they'll get to live happy, healthy lives, hunting all the mice for me and hopefully keeping some of those down. And they may have some other effects at keeping other predators, like let's say hawks, maybe less likely to hang around here just because the rodent population is lower and the hawk doesn't want to have to deal with a cat. So it could have some other beneficial effects. Anyway, just wanted to give you that update on Lexi and Lemmy. Very excited to have them joining the farm. Hopefully they'll make it, well, they'll definitely make it in a YouTube video. So if you haven't gone over there, I hate to promote it for like the 3rd time, but if you haven't gone over there, definitely go check out the YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me on the Farm Chores podcast. These are a lot of fun to make, so hope to see you again on the next episode. If you are listening on Spotify or wherever, make sure you leave a rating so that way Spotify knows it's a good podcast and we should push it out to more people. And hope to see you around. Thanks so much.